Namaste and in Lak'ech, and welcome to this episode of One World in a New World. I'm your host, Zen Benefiel, and as always, please like, subscribe, share profusely, make comments. This is where the real meat of our communication and our integration and our interaction is important for everyone. So thank you in advance, and by all means, stop by planetarycitizens.net and pick up your free copy of Planetary Citizens, Awakening the Heart of Humanity. It will change your life guaranteed. So thanks in advance for that. I know you'll love it. Now, this week's guest is a very interesting man from Congo to Commander. He is Bob Fabien, known as BZ Zinga. He is a trusted cybersecurity executive, servant leader, boardroom strategist, naval commander, coach, and top LinkedIn 3%, actually, for cybersecurity. So he is a graduate of information warfare from the U.S. Navy. He's a Harvard graduate with executive certificate in cybersecurity. This guy's all about the virtual world and the digital space. And also he has an executive certificate in Black corporate board readiness. I didn't know you were Black. And at the Levy Executive Center at Santa Barbara University. So you are going to have a most phenomenally engaged conversation coming right up. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Bob, it is so great to have you here. We had another conversation or several on your one for your podcast as well. I am so thrilled to have you here today.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Coach Zen. Really, really glad to be here. Thank you.
You know, you've got such an interesting life and you know, the reason we have these conversations is because we're bereft of talking about the inner life that we have and shared experience that's possible with that.
Yes.
And in today's world, I think this is the most important feature that we need to be able to turn inward, rely on that experience and talk about it freely without
Yes.
being dismissed or rejected or any of those kinds, thought crazy, right? Because
Yes.
we've proven this is real. So
Absolutely.
understanding that, you were born in the Congo. What was it like in that environment? And what, you know, I know that generally these cultures, other than America, right, are steeped in a rich, I want to say spiritually connected
Hmm.
environment. What was that like? And could you describe that a little bit and how that
Yeah.
affected your life?
I guess when I think of myself now, you mentioned black, and that's not how I see myself, but that's how
I don't
society
either.
defines people, which is fine. No, I know you would understand it. You cannot say it we are because no, some people, I guess, they get to be too logical. They forget about their true essence, no, the
Right.
source, and no,
And we
I
see things with the eyes, and you know, we because of our maligned perspective, I'll put it
yes,
that way.
yes.
We generally judge, criticize, condemn, label, title, you know, do all the things that diminishes that interconnectedness
Exactly.
that we already have.
Exactly. So really for most people, they definitely understand or have an idea of the concept of God. So first and foremost, I see myself as a son of God. That's really my true identity. Some people say nature, the universe, whatever
Hmm.
you want to call it, but I am connected to the source of life. No, first and foremost, that's really who uh, I am. So Now, speaking plainly, no, the language of human in the physical world, I was born somewhere, Point Nord, the Republic of the Congo in Central Africa, which was a French colony. So I am French by culture, Congolese by birth, and of course now I am American by choice. So I've lived in Africa, in Europe, and I've been in the US since I was 17 years old. So my entire adulthood, I've lived in this country. It's really interesting. You mentioned the Navy. I think I tried 3 or 4 times to join the U.S. military. They said no, 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 can't do because I wasn't a citizen. I didn't have a green card, and
Sure.
but
Well, that's a great
eventually,
story that, and we'll get into that. I want to
yes.
dive into the
So
Wayback Machine again and go back to your childhood. And what was that
yes,
like in your understanding, recognition, experience of things beyond this world and that
yes.
spiritual connection that you had as a child?
So, as a child in the Congo, prior to the French colonizing the Congo, I guess no, we had a lot of strong. I guess some people would call it animist, no, uh, very advanced form of religion and connection with the ancestry, as well and connection with nature. No, back then we didn't have medicine, but my grandmother, for example, unfortunately, she might be the last person in my lineage who had that knowledge. Like they could go into the woods, the jungle, get
Hmm.
specific herbs and roots and things and make potions and heal people. I mean, people would be sick, have a fever, and she would give you something. Within a couple of hours, you will be completely healed. Really,
I
miraculously.
imagine she had quite the apothecary,
Yes.
right?
But the truth is, because I was a pre-med student and I've studied chemistry and biology in college, it's actually science. It is medicine. Those roots, those herbs add the same element you would get in Tylenol or whatever it is. So it's not magic. It was based in science, but growing up, we didn't call it science, right? It was just special knowledge only the enlightened
Sure,
people had. But
sure.
but anyway, so we had that, and then when the French came, they were mostly Catholic. So I would say maybe about 60, 70% of the Congo when I was growing up were Catholic Christians. And that was kind of, I guess, the spiritual atmosphere
Sure.
environment
Well, you
going.
set the framework up for us to understand things. So, how did it would seem that you had multiple places to draw from to correlate your own personal experience.
Mhm.
How did that, I mean, was there something with your grandma, with your own experience that gave you that initial recognition of that greater connection?
So I think I really became aware of the presence of God, specifically Christ, in my life when I was around 12 years
Hmm.
old. But there are definitely many things even today in science that we just cannot explain, right? I guess we call them miracle, right? Someone has, let's say,
Sure.
stage 3 or 4 cancer, no surgery or anything like that, and then they go back, they can find a trace of it. What
Yeah,
happened?
yeah.
So
Well,
there are
was there anything as a kid that made you go, how the heck did that happen?
Well, I mean, as a kid, I guess I love the innocence of childhood because everything is kind of like a wonder, and you can't always explain everything with logic and science, right? So, uh, and maybe another thing I probably need to add, where I grew up, there was also what's commonly known as witchcraft, right?
Hmm.
Sorcerers, incantation, and people cursing
Your grandmother would
people
be
out.
considered a shaman today, right?
Maybe, but there were definitely some people, witchcraft doctors, some other people would go to. They would give them money, and then they would put a curse on somebody else or ask for a special blessing. Now, when I was growing up, we were pretty wealthy. My father, know, did very, very well. And then my mother also had a business that was extremely successful. So many times people in the community or whatever would be jealous of them and try to curse them out and stuff. So we would have to kind of deal with some strange things happening, right? So
Now, do you find that
just
that kind
some
of
weird.
judgment? I'm sorry, but that I
Mhm.
want to pause and forgive
Please,
the interruption. Um,
no problem.
do you find that people tend to just be angry with themselves and project at others because they aren't able to do or think they cannot do what others
Yes.
have?
I think that that's definitely something to do with it. Yes. Uh, But no, but the way I grew up, right? I am really not competing with anybody else. I am competing with the last version of myself. So
Right, right,
I was trying to be better than I was yesterday, because I really believe no, everybody has to run their own race, right? We each of us, I believe, we have our own purpose, and there are certain things. There's a reason why you are alive, and there's something you need to do, and I think it's very individual. It's very custom made for each person. So I've really been raised not to compare myself with
sure.
other
And by
people.
doing
Just be
so,
the
isn't
best
there
version
this
of me.
sense of being able to fit in with everyone else because you've honored your own design?
Yes. So part of the way I look at this, right, I am not afraid to shine, to be in my zone of genius, because basically I see myself not as if I am better than everybody else, but I am a child of God in the midst of other children of God, right? I am a light amongst other light. So I can shine as bright as I can, as I am called to, and also I want to encourage everybody else to do the same. So
Sure.
there is absolutely no competition. It's more like a collaboration, I
So
think.
would you say, and I'm going to go back to that simple phrase, right? Would you say that is an embodiment of loving and being loved?
I think at its essence, that's it. I think that's really the entire mystery of the world in those two phrases. For those who read the Bible, Jesus says, "No, love the Lord with all your heart, your mind, but then also love your neighbor as yourself." So I think it really comes down to love, loving yourself, because you can't love your neighbor unless you love yourself, and
Right.
then loving the person to your right and to your left,
And
regardless
once
of
you do, then
the
things
color
begin
of
to,
their skin, their background, their gender, and all of that. Because at our essence, I think we are spirit. We have a
oh,
soul,
absolutely. Now
and a
the
body.
rest are elements and ancillary features, the perspective, the skill set,
Hmm.
the capabilities that we have to share that with others
Yes,
in order to find a way towards a greater harmony,
yes, I believe
coherence,
so.
if you will.
Yes. I really love the word coherence, and you mentioned that quite a bit when I was interviewing you. So I did a little bit more thinking about that. But I think coherence really is the key, right? You have to be in alignment.
Sure. Well, and where we put our attention, intention, and interaction toward being our best,
Hmm.
right? Being that child of God, being
Yes.
that connected individual that has access to God, infinite intelligence, Father in
Yes.
heaven, Mother in
Hmm.
heaven, all
Yes.
of those things that are within us. And
Yes.
we've been told throughout every scripture imaginable that that connection is there.
Hmm. No,
So isn't it
I
about time we
agree.
began using that? Maybe that's the next shift, the
Yes.
Evo leap for humanity that we're getting ready to take now.
Yeah, because I do think, unfortunately, for most of the world, again, no, I've lived all around the place, Africa, Europe, and the US, and then once I joined the Navy, I've traveled all around the world. But I think one problem we have in the world today is really control, right? People want to control, they try to manage outcome. And I think coherence really focuses more on alignment and trust, right? Control would say, okay, do this because I said so. But coherence says, no, follow me because what I
Right.
believe, right?
Yeah.
Say and do are consistent. So
My dad
there
used to
is
tell
quite
me as a
a
kid
difference.
that same thing, right? He would say, and he was 32nd degree Mason as well, Knights Templar. He would say, do the little things, and the
Hmm.
big things will take care of themselves.
Yeah, I
And
believe
so
that.
we think these are little things because they're subtle, they're intentional, they're choices that we make that nobody else knows about except ourselves.
Hmm.
And so when those opportunities, when the disturbances, the distractions come up, sometimes it's easier to be distracted than it is to be centered in integrity with self.
Yes, especially today, we have so much distraction, social media, TV, and just on and on and on and on, and it's very difficult to focus.
Hmm.
Uh, to create that space that allows you to just be centered and think for a change. Because there's just so
Absolutely.
many
And it's
voices
funny,
from
I
everywhere.
looked up, we talked about my spiritual experiences that at 18, kind of a rite of passage, and
Yes.
having an experience of cosmic consciousness and returning with the understanding that we all are and just unaware, right?
Hmm.
And so we're all have that infinite intelligence available to our specific being, if you will.
Yes.
Now, with that understanding, is there, do you think that in that process, you kind of felt this to be true in your teenage or early adult years, going through your educational process, the math and science? How did those things begin to coalesce and make sense that both are saying the same thing?
Huh, that's an interesting question. I guess when I look back, for those who believe in the divine, in God, it looks like really everything is connected. Even things that on the surface look like they might be disconnected. I think it really takes us all the way back to source.
Mhm.
It's pretty interesting, right? When you talked about science, like
Those are
me
great
for
words, right? I mean, there's so many, so much there,
yes.
especially when you have an experience. It's like getting a download of decades in a
Hmm.
few seconds. And how do you explain that? How do you
Yeah.
articulate that?
Yeah, I guess it's just I guess a spiritual insight. Some people might say. Like I remember when I was in school in the Congo, which is based on the French school system. When you get in high school, they start to kind of specialize you, whether you're going to be doing
Mhm.
like arts and language and things like that or hard science. So, but for me, when they tested me, I was good at both the the math, the science, the physics, and English and poetry. I was good at everything. So it was very
So
difficult.
some hemispheric balance there, eh?
Yes, yes. So, but really, when you think about it, all of the knowledge we have, of course, now we have more knowledge than we've ever had in our existence. With emerging tech, artificial intelligence, the knowledge has just expanded exponentially, right? For
Right.
example, when I was studying for my PhD in microbiology. That was circa 2000 or so. My main professor, the chairman for my dissertation, he was telling me he got his PhD in microbiology back in the 80s. So that was 20 years before. He said back then he knew absolutely everything there was to know about microbiology, period. But in
Hmm.
2000, it was just impossible. Just so
Sure.
much knowledge. And so now really one of the skills we were learning as a PhD candidate was not to know everything, but how to find answers, how to do research. So you know
Isn't that
what?
really what education's about, right?
Yeah,
It's not to
I guess so.
know, it's to how to find out.
Yes, how to find out. That is so powerful because if you want to know everything, man, you need to stop right now because you never will be able to. Kind of like
Right.
Socrates taught us,
It'd be
right?
really frustrating, right?
Yes, because the more I know that I don't know, right?
Yeah.
The more knowledge you have, the more you know, okay, I know this, but there's something else out there,
Yeah.
and I need
Well, and it doesn't diminish what
to
you know,
discover. Exactly.
right? It
I,
just
I
builds
would
upon that.
agree to that, yes. But
So as you were moving through there, it interesting how that the hemispheric balance, right? Your right and left brain and both creative, the intellect, and
mm,
I find it really interesting that the corpus callosum, right? The membrane that's in between insane and the membrane, if you will, um, it's the transceiver, right? And the pineal and the hypothalamus are at
yeah,
opposite ends of that. So that's a
yes.
really interesting design when you look at it through the ancient philosophies and the glands and the chakra systems and things of that nature, which
Mhm.
Western medicine really hadn't even begun to touch yet.
Although it looks like there are, I mean, I'm seeing more and more physicians, especially maybe because I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area where they do more
Hmm.
integrative medicine and practice
Oh, and
because
Berkeley is
really,
one of the foremost thought engaging schools,
yes,
right?
because there is definitely a lot of limitation to modern technology and medicine. So there's got to be something beyond that, because there are a lot of things today doctors just cannot
Sure,
explain.
sure.
Uh, uh,
Well, with quantum sciences now too, we're finding it,
yeah.
it's not material. You don't mind, it
Hmm.
doesn't matter because there is no matter, right? It's all
Yes.
energy. And so automatically that states that we're interconnected in the field. Now it's
Hmm.
not quite unified as
Yes.
Einstein would like to, and he encouraged, right?
Yes.
And, especially with his statement of, seeing life, seeing everything in life as a miracle, right? Because
Absolutely.
when you have the awe, then you wonder, and that brings the curiosity.
Hmm.
And that curiosity is all important, as you have already illustrated. So, how did
Yes.
you apply that curiosity uh, as you were getting your studies? You went through that, and you, for some reason, got involved in the digital space. And
Yeah, that's a long story, but let me make it short. But first, before I get there, yeah, I do believe that curiosity is really a master key for success, right? Having an open mind. I know when I was younger, my mind was no a little bit. Actually, no, I think it was open when I was born in the kid, but as I went through school, then they tried to close my mind, and then I realized, no, I need to have an open
yeah,
mind because it's
no,
true. I
my
mean,
mind's not in the book, it's on
yeah.
my shoulders, right?
Exactly, because you may know a lot and definitely more now than you did 5 or 10 or 15 years ago, but you still don't know everything. Like we've already established, it's going to be impossible for you to know
Sure.
everything. So that means you need to be open for feedback, even from people you may not like, or even people
Yeah.
who may
And
not even
oftentimes when you see an
like you.
anomaly, it means you simply don't understand things enough yet.
Exactly. So having that mindset that no, I am open to learn. And again, it doesn't mean that no, every new information that comes my way, I'm just going to believe it as dogma or anything. I can test it, I can consider it, but then if eventually I will make my own decision. But at least though, I have this space where I don't just react, where I can respond, I can think, and
Right.
I can
Right.
decide
Now, do
what
you need
my
the repetition, right? Used to say one time's random, twice is a pattern. Have you got to the place where you recognize that it's not random and you don't need the second validation to know something's true?
yeah, and the other thing about truth also, that's just my opinion. It might expand with time, or at least your understanding of it. Because I have, for example, known a lot of people. Again, I come from the Christian faith, where
Hmm.
people become extremely dogmatic and they want to do fundamentalist, and they want to do things exactly this way, and that's the only interpretation
Oh
they have.
yeah.
When
Oh, my wife
eventually,
was just watching a video
better
of how
meaning.
the early church, the Romans, right, took charge and totally bastardized Jesus' message in
Hmm.
order to control populations and
Yes.
missed the whole point.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And it's also been used to control women, for example, like women
Well,
cannot
yeah. I
preach.
mean, look at the
And
canonization. Woman
yes,
came from man's rib. How that puts him subservient from the get-go. Why would
yeah,
you want to do that
yeah,
except for what you said earlier, control?
yeah. But I guess part of my point is your I think truth is eternal. It is the same yesterday, today, and forevermore. But I think the way we interpret it, we understand it, that might evolve with time. And hopefully, we would have more of an
Hmm.
open mind than a closed mind.
And in that open and closed space,
Best.
oftentimes when we introduce something new that seems heretical, right, almost, and the first thing we do is get pushback or blowback, and instead of that
Hmm.
open, well, I don't know, let's look at this. So, how do you
Yeah.
think those bridges can be built and crossed as we're moving through this new configuration of information, thought, exploration, curiosity, and leadership?
Yeah. So the way I look at it, I have the freedom to think whatever I want, right? I stand on my own truth, but also respect, the ability of my neighbor to also think their own way, their own mind. So
Sure.
I think what is good, especially in America, in my experience, is up to now has been the freest country I have ever lived in, maybe because of our constitution and our first amendment, which might be at risk now. But anyway, at least with the way it was design. I don't have to force my religion, my thinking, or the way I look at the world on everybody
Right.
else. You are completely free to have your own thought. However, what I also love is, this open market, capitalism, good or bad, I don't know, but where we can have an exchange of ideas. You can write a book, you can have a podcast, you can work on your own race, do what you are called to do. You can let your light shine, and eventually, Jesus talked about being the salt of the earth and the light of the world. Eventually, you're gonna spark a thought, just an idea, just a seed, and somebody else is gonna pick that up in their own time. They are going to go. They're gonna,
Sure.
increase their
Right.
awareness, and I think eventually
Yeah,
get
everything has a time and a season,
to where
right?
you are. Exactly. So what I think is extremely wrong is when, we started in America, around maybe 10, 15 years ago, they start to cancel people, and no, you are not allowed to say this. And no, let people speak. That's what the First Amendment is for. Especially me,
Right.
coming from the U.S. Navy, our people, our sailors, are willing to give their lives so that everybody in America has the right to speak their own mind. Whether or not I agree with them, even if they say things that are racist and
Sure.
evil and just plain old stupid, you have
Well,
a right to be
everybody has the
stupid
right, right?
in
As long as they
the
don't
U.S.
aggress towards another.
Exactly, as long as they do not do that. But really, I guess, I am open for the, open exchange market of ideas, different
Hmm.
ideas, and being able to influence one another.
So back to the
Speaking,
question of how did this drive you into this drive for coherence, right? How did
yes,
it move you toward the digital space and cybersecurity and all of those kinds of things? Because
yeah,
this is the new frontier, right? Where
absolutely,
everybody's scared to death that something's going to happen, it's going to take charge, and it was built by humans to protect humans initially. So I
yes.
don't really see that as being an option. Of course, there are idiots who will try to, you know, use it for their own good, but I think that's going to be minimal because the rest of us are really looking and observing it and making sure that that kind of stuff doesn't happen.
Yeah, that's one thing with technology. Unfortunately, you can use it for a lot of good, but you can use it for evil as well. It's really how you implement it. But make a very long story short, so I came to the US. I was a pre-med student, and then I had the opportunity to do chemistry and biological research when I was in college. I was part of the honors program student association, and I ended up graduating from college. It was almost a 4.0 GPA. I think it was like 3.8 something.
Mhm.
But I did it in 3 years instead of four. And again, I had research that I was going to publish for my organic chemistry lab. But anyway, because of that, I was allowed to skip the Master of Science and go straight for the PhD. So I was a PhD student in microbiology, like I mentioned earlier. So I completed
Mhm.
everything except for the final dissertation. So I am what you would call ABD, right? All but the dissertation. But basically, what happened is I got married and I had a baby on the way. So as a graduate student at the University of Alabama back then, they paid for all of my tuition and they gave me about $1,000 stipend. So $12,000 a year. Now, when I was single, that was perfect. That was awesome. Now, after I got married, especially when my child was on the way, it's like, okay, I need to get a better job. So
Right.
basically, that kind of forced me to get out of science and look for a job. And I couldn't find a job, using my background in chemistry or biology, but I could find a job in tech because I was doing tech since I was about 18 years old at the university. So that kind of got me into technology, and then I got into some certification for Microsoft, and that led me into cyber security. Like they say, the rest is history. So that's kind of how it kind of was set for me.
Hmm.
And then from there, I went from a technician to becoming my last job. I was the chief information security officer for Santa Clara University in the Bay Area. And then after 9/11, I joined the Navy after several
Yeah, you had a darn difficult
Yeah,
time, with doing
yeah,
something that you wanted to do by,
disapproval. But
protect America, right?
I eventually did it because I got my green card in 2004. So I went back to the recruiter, and that's when I started. They said, yeah, if I was a US citizen, I would have started as an officer because I already had a degree. But since I wasn't a US citizen, I had to be enlisted. So which was fine. So I started at the very, very bottom. I was an E1
Yeah, we all got to have our rules and regulations,
civilian
right?
recruit. But in anyway, and then a couple of years later, I became a US citizen. So I went back to recruiter. That's when I started my package to become a commissioned officer in the US Navy. Again, no, like
Oh,
we say,
and
the rest is history. But one thing I
thank you
do,
for your service too. I
thank you,
hadn't mentioned that yet.
do
Because you're
appreciate
the
that.
kind of guy that we want,
Thank you.
right? You're conscious, you're considerate, you're looking at, okay, how can we work together better
Yes.
and build a world that works for everybody?
Exactly. And also around 2000, so 25 years ago, there was a great shift change in the Department of Defense, right? Because the cyber thing became more and more pronounced and more important, right? Today, you can really win a war without firing a single bullet. It's just amazing what you can do in cyberspace. So the Navy stood up the information professional community, which are the people who specialize in cyber. So it later became the information warfare community. But that's pretty much what I've been trying to do and what I have done for the Navy, starting 21 years ago as a seaman recruit and today as a senior officer, as a commander.
Are there, you just mentioned something, you can win a war without firing a single bullet because
Hmm.
of technology today.
Yes.
Is it really necessary to win a war? And is it also, mm, is it that big of a threat? And what are the considerations of that threat?
Yes. Well, I don't know.
And is it something you can
It
talk
is
about?
it is a little ambiguous because I am a man of peace now. Thank God, as of right now, I haven't been put in a combat zone where I actually have to use a weapon to kill another being, just because they
Mhm.
are enemies of the US or to protect myself or my sailors. But many of my friends have been in that situation. As a spiritual person, I really don't think you should take life, even if those people are quote unquote evils or enemies of the state.
Well, who
But
was it? They built a round prison. This was back in the 16th, 17th century, something like that. Way before co-working and incubator spaces were developed, right?
mhm,
But I forget who the ruler was at the time, but he built this round prison, and most of it were military people that were misbehaving. And
mhm,
so they created a rehab center for job training and business building and all of these kinds of things
mm,
that evolved out of this prison.
well,
Wow. That was, why don't we do things like that today?
yes.
And I guess that's enough of a tangent for now.
No, but
But the fact that it
that
was
is quite
done,
insightful. Yeah. Yeah. No, I think we really have a lot of problems and challenges today. But what I am hoping as a person, as an individual, is that we have much more cooperation, right? Because if you are doing business with other people, right, if you collaborate with them on something that benefits their country and our
right?
country and really the world, there will be no reason for war, right? Um, so
Right.
what I,
Well, as long as, a hungry person is going to be angry and probative as opposed to someone who's got their needs taken care of and doesn't need to be concerned about
yeah.
their basic survival.
Yes, and what I'm really hoping is with technologies that we are developing, that as human, not just me as a U.S. citizen, but just as a human being, as a member. I like your book. You talk about a planetary citizen, but yeah, I am a human being among what 7, 8 billions people out there. We should be able to really help and provide the basic necessity for all human beings with the resources we have on Earth right
Hmm.
now. I think it is really possible, and
And,
maybe it's gonna
and
take a shift in mindset, awareness, kind of putting a
and
check on
distribution
ego
systems, right?
and greed. Yeah,
The systems are all
but
there, the materials there, the resources are there, the people are there. They're
maybe
just
it's just
maligned
the
at
will.
present because they've been built to serve a few rather
Yes,
than the many.
yes.
And I
So
think maybe would you see or do you see that as being part of the shift in what you're seeing in the cyber realms of
well,
more cooperation rather than um, castigation and concern?
that is my hope, really. Because in many ways, what we have built our system so that there is no mutual destruction. That's what we did with the nuclear bomb, and now I think we're going to do the same with artificial intelligence. No, and
Yeah.
we are in such a position that nobody would dare, right, do anything, because if they did, we would simply destroy this entire world, and, like, in an instant. And we
Yeah.
have
Why would we want to
the
do that?
power to do so. So it's going to be catastrophic. I guess that's one way to do it, but I'm not sure that's the best way, though.
Yeah. Now, are you familiar with what do they call them? DAOs?
No,
DAO is the acronym for it. Decentralized Autonomous Organization or something
mm,
like that. Um, Bitcoin was
hmm,
kind of the initiator
yeah,
of that. But there
using
are that
crypto.
philosophy now, because Bitcoin wasn't really used for good at that time. It was used
Hmm.
for an exchange on the dark web.
Yes.
Um, and I'm not so sure that that's good to bring it into the light web. However,
Hmm.
things have to be balanced eventually. Now, my point was that do you see, or my question is that do you see that kind of decentralized autonomous organization being more capable of manifesting with the technology that we have now and the distribution
Hmm.
of it?
I would say so, yes. It is really, amazing what we as human beings can accomplish. But really, my hope, my prayer, is that we really deploy, this emerging technology for good. Bitcoin,
Hmm.
talking about crypto uh, currency, and all of that quantum physics, quantum computing, artificial intelligence, all of these emerging tech. My my hope is really for the human being, as we develop this, that we really concentrate to be used for that, for the good of all humanity. Uh,
How do you see that
because
hamening?
that's $1 million question,
And what
isn't it?
part are you
Yeah,
playing in that? Because in your position, as a
yeah,
commander, right, you
yes. So
have the
definitely for
opportunity.
the yes, for our country, the United States, I think we are mostly very, very good now. I've been growing up, maybe I have been brainwashed, but I believe the Navy is definitely a force for good. No, and
Ultimately, that's the intent, right? The
yes,
strongest defense is the offense or the capability of it
yes,
so that nobody wants to mess with you.
exactly.
But
So you can look at
that
it at
only
a
goes so
national.
far. It still has to be for the good, right?
Yeah, so you can look at it right at this national security level, but then also, like, I live in Silicon Valley, right? That's where a lot of this technology comes from. Like every 6 months they come up with new things. But usually the driver for Silicon
6 months.
yeah,
I think it's down to nine. What is it?
yeah,
Moore's Law,
it
right?
has
It
been
used to be,
accelerated for sure, but
yeah.
my point being is, in Silicon Valley they don't really care much about national security or peace in the world, or solving those world problems. What is really driving them is making money, right? Being
That's
the
right.
first to go to market. Again, it's going to be technology that's going to make very, very few people extremely wealthy. Right now we have a bunch of billionaires, and soon I think Elon Musk is going to be the
Well,
first
what are they going to
trillionaire.
do with that, right? Is there a way to convert that
Exactly.
extra wealth
So
back into a system that can then be self-supportive?
yeah, that's why I really love what Bill Gates has done, or the co-founder of Microsoft. Pretty much by the time he dies, he's going to be poor. He's going to get rid of all of his wealth, and he's really trying to really have a positive impact on the world. And I think that is very
Mhm. Now,
very
there are
much
some tendencies for
good.
some that really aren't Billites, if you will.
Hmm.
They see some of the things that he did, especially around COVID, and they want to judge and criticize and hold that rather
Hmm.
than get,
Yes, sir.
okay, so he's just a guy doing what he thinks is right. Didn't
Yeah.
work out, which is cool.
At least it tried.
And it raised our awareness and
Yes.
exactly, at least he tried. He was trying to
Yes.
do something. Trump's
Hmm.
in the same place right now.
Yes.
He's trying to do something. And
Exactly.
from a business perspective, which is what you mentioned earlier, one of my earlier guests was the president and founder of the Global Chamber.
Hmm.
And we got almost 600 locations around the globe right
Wow.
now. And again, the premise, you're doing business, you care for each other, you're in
Hmm.
peace,
Hmm.
and it supports that peaceful navigation into
Yes.
getting needs met.
Yes. Yeah, that's why I really think we need to get back to coherence and acting from a place of love, right? Loving yourself and your neighbor, beyond your
Outside of
national
religion,
boundary. Yes, and
right?
yeah. So I,
Because
I,
religion causes some of the problems too, and pitting each
yes,
other against each other. And that's just ridiculous. When you drop all of
exactly.
that and you just look at pure science, we're
Hmm.
all energy, that's love.
Yes, yes. I think that that's the potential to really change the world. And no, as far as I know, we only have one planet in this entire universe or universes where we
For
can live
now,
as human beings. I know people are trying to go to Mars, but I don't think they're gonna be able to use that planet
right.
the way we live on Earth.
Oh,
So we only have one planet, and we need to take care of it, right?
brings up a question. I'm going to jump off the precipice here for a little bit and go into outer
Yes.
space.
Hmm.
Are there concerns about um, off-planet intelligence having access to or interaction with AI?
Well, I am sure there are. No, I don't think there is any definitive proof, at least from where I stand. But no, I am sure there are people a lot more smarter than I am, even when we talk about, aliens or, you know, life
Right. Well, now we got the TikTok
outside.
videos, right?
Yeah,
Military pilots saying,
yeah,
"Oh yeah, they're real," right?
yeah.
They look weird.
But
That TikTok doesn't look like pretty much everything else that most people
yeah.
see.
Yeah.
Um,
But what's really fascinating to me is really science fiction. The way science fiction is becoming real every day. Like more and more. Everything that was just out there and weird and just
yeah, from Dick
fiction
Tracy to
is
the Apple Watch,
becoming
right?
reality. Yeah. It's really amazing how that works out. But yeah, it's I guess I am really glad that I am living right now, right, in the 21st century, not 300 years ago, but right now in this time of our history. It's
Well, who
very
knows? You might have lived then too.
exciting. Yeah. But it is really exciting to see kind of know where we are going. But I kind of feel like as humanity, we are coming to like an inflection point where we can do something really beautiful, really great for the benefit of all humanity, or no, we could do something extremely terrible and pretty much end the life the way we know it. So, uh,
Do you think that a few, Howard Bloom brought this out in the Lucifer Principle and his scientific study of history and how a few people manipulated masses and entire populations by telling lies consistently and controlling the media stream, whether it be a town crier or the internet. We
yeah.
know today the internet's throttled, it's managed still, and some things don't get through.
Hmm.
Others do now, like with AI and chat and Gemini and Claude and all of
Yes.
those, they have access to information and some of that filters through a little more easily now.
Hmm.
It's probably a little marginalized. Do you think that this burgeoning information age now, far more than,
Yeah.
it's not just technology, it's information.
Yes.
We used to, see the curve right before the century, or 25 years or so before the turn of the century. It escalated to where it was almost vertical. Then,
Hmm.
and the shift for the Mayan calendar brings out that, awareness and consciousness is also
Yes.
parallel to that information curve. Now we're combining the two of those in a nice little, maybe there's a third part of that where integrity is involved,
Hmm.
that this new cording, if you will,
Yes.
allows us to bring those elements together and provide something of sustenance to each other in the world and take us to that next level, which,
Hmm.
according to all the calendars, that's where we're headed. So, do we trust our own iniquity in our capability to make judgments with lack of knowledge? Or do we look at historical references that lead us to this new world, if you will, that's based on love?
Well, I think I prefer the latter, but I don't know the way because I don't know. To me, I might be wrong, but to me,
But if
there
you
are
did know,
kind of several layers to that, depending on how you
oh
look at it.
yeah,
There is
absolutely.
the individual, and there is us as a country, but also kind of think about the, I guess
Oh,
you could
there's
call it
individuals,
the,
communities, groups, organizations, states, nations.
but then cosmically too, right? And us being a planetary citizen, and as far as I know, of planet Earth, the one and only planet where we can live and thrive. So
Mhm.
I think it is not easy. I think it is very complex. It is challenging, but I am hoping, right, for the people to really be led uh, by their best angels. I guess that's the way of saying
Sure,
it. Like, for example, one verse in the Bible I like in Luke 2:52, right? Uh, Peace on earth and goodwill to men. So we really have to have goodwill. We need people of conviction, people who are coherent, people of integrity, right? People who are congruent with their values. I think it has to be value based and other centered.
sure.
And
And reaching that now, do you ascribe to, and especially, we're I think you're probably a little younger than me still.
yes,
However,
I am
as you,
very, very young. Like I see myself as a 20-year-old.
oh, me too. I've never grown up, even though
Yes.
I don't, look a little different. Um, do you find in your maturation process that the relationships that you begin to notice are basically around five, and that's the body, mind, spirit, planet, and cosmos.
Hmm.
And so those would seem to be, the natural, you got five fingers, right?
Yeah.
There's all kinds of correlations if we just begin to look on a simple level, right?
Yes.
But as we get older, we recognize those relationships are significant. Now, what if we took that understanding and began to work with our children rather than putting them in boxes and testing
Hmm.
them and norming them and making them feel horrible in the process, right? I mean, I was a school teacher. I see all this.
Yes.
I experienced it. You and I both experienced it from the student side
Hmm.
and, from the educator side too. You have this, something's not right here. So how do you see that evolving and the use of your skill set, the technology, cyber tools, and those kinds of things? Do you see that moving us towards a more open-mindedness towards holistic education early? And then how might that, reflect in our educational systems? How do we change
Yeah.
dinosaurs like that?
I I definitely hope so, right? Because as an information warfare officer, one thing that really concerns me a lot about now, I'm talking about America right now. I think it's a national security matter is our kids right now. They A lot of them do not really want to learn science, right? I think STEM is extremely important on science,
Oh, they
technology,
just want to be
engineering,
distracted by
math.
the apps on their phones, right?
Yeah, yes, but I think that's going to cause a massive problem. Like I know in the military generally, probably the last 10 years or so I've been in, we've had some difficulties even recruiting the next generation of leaders in the Navy because our kids, they just no, they don't qualify. They are couch potatoes. They don't exercise. They're not physically fit, and there is a lot of problem, and that really concerns me quite a lot because no, I will probably be with retiring this year from the Navy
So
after
what do you
20
think
more
the lack
years.
of
But
inspiration is about?
maybe it is a lot of things. But I guess part of my point is we really need to do something with the next generation. I know no, most people right now they say they're having a hard time communicating with Gen Z and getting them on board within their organization and motivating them. And of course, Gen Alpha is coming right after them. And these kids, they are really no, they are born with an Apple phone in their fingers. No, when
Right.
they become teenager, they really are screenagers, screens everywhere, which is really really scary too. But I don't
Well, we face the
I
same
don't
thing.
know.
America, when American companies went to foreign countries in the 80s and tried
Hmm.
to build businesses, they failed 80% of the time. Why?
Hmm.
Because they didn't study the culture
Yes,
and they tried
yes.
to supplant the American culture over the local culture, and that's
Hmm.
never going to work.
Yes,
Do
yes,
we are we doing the same thing with the kids and seeing them from our perspective and not understanding their perspective and helping nurture them along? It's kind of like
yes,
becoming one of them. It's like, okay, now what would I like and
yes.
how can I
Yeah,
find that?
I think we need that more and more. Like, I'm not ashamed to admit when I became a commanding officer in the U.S. Navy for the Global Network Operations Security Center in Suffolk, about a third of my command, they were all millennial and Gen Zs. And
Hmm.
I was having a very hard time motivating them because they are really, really different. They see things completely different than the older generation. So
And their intelligence level is astronomical,
yeah, but what I did though is
which makes them lazy because they
I
know how to do
well,
stuff easier, right?
they appear to be lazy. I
Yeah, yeah,
don't
yeah,
think
yeah. I misspoke,
they
but
are, but yeah, but basically what I did is I went to both of my daughters. They are from that generation, and they really coached me and mentored me, and I was able again to have that open mind and get a lot of lessons from them, which I was able to apply within my command, and then I started seeing the changes, right? So
yeah, yeah.
it's really it's not just mentorship from the top down, but I think it's from the bottom up too. So we need to have an open mind where we
It's
can actually
reciprocal. It's like a Mobius
yes,
strip, right?
exactly.
It's never ending.
Yes. So I think we are going to need to work together to figure that out. I really don't think there is a silver bullet or
What are your
in anything
considerations being in the
like that.
position you are with the leadership and understanding of servant leadership that you have?
Mm.
What do you see as potential solutions?
Well, for one thing, I really believe in the 21st century, one of the most critical skill really is leadership. It's not artificial intelligence, it's not emerging tech, it's really leadership because all of these things, they are going to change and they're going to
So
change
let's define
rapidly.
leadership so that you and I and our audience are all on the same page.
Yes. So to me, I think the simplest definition I love is the one by my mentor, Dr. John C. Maxwell. He wrote the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, where he says leadership is influence, nothing more and nothing less. I think that's really what it is. It has nothing to do with your title. You don't even have to have direct report to be a leader. And to me, a leader is different from an influencer. All of these young people today, they want to become an influencer on Facebook, Instagram, or whatever, have a lot of followers. But no,
Sure.
that
Well,
doesn't
and
make
influence
you
comes from
a
a vibrational spot
leader.
too, right?
Yes.
It's the resonance that you feel. It's the coherence you feel with the
Yes, from
energy
other.
and conviction of the leader that has that truthfulness, that integrity,
Yes.
honesty,
Hmm.
servant leadership, the care, right? Because
Coherence.
leaders
Yes.
today, it's not about command and control.
Yes.
It's about nurturing and guidance.
Absolutely. So that takes us back to that influence, which I think is critical because I think if we are going to be successful, we really need to be able to work with people, not just technology, but people. That's really, really key, right? It's people first, in my opinion, and then you can add technology and then governance
Right, right. We're
processes
all books,
and
different covers,
everything else.
but
Yes.
inside the book, we're all the same.
Exactly. But the thing with dealing with people who like they are the greatest asset in your organization, but they could also be the greatest challenge, right? Because we are
Sure.
all
Well,
different, coming
depending on
from
their perspective, their
different,
backgrounds, where
exactly,
how their own life.
personalities and
Yeah,
all of that.
and it's so
That's why really leadership is both an art and a science, and
sure.
you've got to know your people. That's the first thing we are taught when we become officers in the U.S. Navy, right? We said mission first, but people always. You've got to know your people, their strength, their
Right.
weaknesses, no opportunities, threat, and kind of like when I was a commanding officer, the way I thought about it is like, okay, I am in charge of this small bus. This is my mission. This is my organization. The buck stop with me. So it's kind of like I have this bus. Then I want to make sure I get the right people into my bus. And then I want to make sure I get the right people on the right seat within the bus. So that's kind of like the challenge
Right.
of leadership. This way, together, as we work as an organization, we can
Well, then
produce
you got skill
and
set
be
and competencies,
effective and
right?
have synergy, right? To do a lot
Yeah.
more than we can individually, maximizing our strength and minimizing our weaknesses. So, but then it becomes more and more challenging the more people you have, right? When I used to supervise only one or two or three people, that was pretty easy. But now in my Navy career, now I've been in places where I had about 186 people under me. That is a lot of people, and you have to know each of them. Yesterday, I interviewed General Brito, a four-star general who retired recently. He was the
Hmm.
last commanding general for TRADOC, the training and doctrine command for the army. But he had like over what? Almost five 5,000 people who reported directly to him. Now, there is no way you're going to know 5,000 people intimately, but he was saying that
Sure.
he was trying to really maximize the chances of getting to know his uh, people. So, but I guess what I'm saying is it really has to be value based and people centered. Forget about technology for now. Value based, people centered, and then you're gonna figure out the technology part. And I think part of what does innovation, and I love what we do here in Silicon Valley, is really giving people the freedom to think outside of the box, to have that psychological safety, right? Where
Outside of the
they,
box and outside of the dollars.
yes, and also where it's okay to make mistake. Just because you make a mistake
Yeah.
doesn't mean that you are done
Well,
and
Maxwell,
that's all.
right, one of his
And
books, Fail Forward,
learning. Exactly.
right?
Yes.
Don't drag the past. And this goes into that Lao Tzu, right?
Yes.
Brought this out. When you're in the present, there's no stress. If
Yes.
you're in the past or the future, you're experiencing stress, usually because
Exactly.
you're
Yes.
either, concerned or reflective or resentful or
Hmm.
regretful of the past
Yes.
and worried about the future. Oh, when's the other shoe going to drop,
Yes.
right?
So live in the
Instead of
present.
being present and just letting all that go,
Yes, yes. But
right?
really to do that again, you have to get rid of all of the distraction. And today there are so many distractions, much more than there were when my grandparents were alive. So it's becoming a lot more challenging. But that's why I think we really need to develop ourself, right? Our inner person and be present and really prioritize
Sure.
it, right?
But how do we do that? How do we recognize this within ourselves? What the level of self-examination that's necessary to be
Mhm.
able to see that ourselves and not be scared of looking in the mirror?
Yeah, I think that's the hard work that every man, every woman really has to do. And again, today in 2025, if you are not careful, no, you are going to be really pushed to and fro, and just a lot of meetings and schedules and things happening, TV, social media, Facebook, and all of that, that you really get distracted for most of your time. So you really need to prioritize this. Every morning, spend time with
Hmm.
yourself, thinking about what are my goals, what is my vision? What do I need to accomplish? Because if you don't have your own goals and vision, you're going to be working for somebody else's goal and
Oh, right, right, right. And
vision,
like all
right?
this stuff,
So
you and I are both pretty
it's
heavily involved in LinkedIn, and I know I get, dozens of
yes,
pitch slaps,
hmm
I call them, a week, right?
yes,
Sometimes a
yes, yes.
day. And it's
But
like, okay, wait a
believe
minute,
it or
guys.
not, in 2007, when I first started doing LinkedIn, it was mostly recruiters trying to look for talent. But today, you're right, it's mostly sales. I don't know if this shift
And
happened,
yet
but
there's still like for what I'm doing with Planetary Citizens, right? It's a
mhm,
huge project that takes,
yes,
I mean, it took me 50 years just to get it to this place where it's presentable.
yes,
And I've been
yes,
able to structure it and display things at least at a high level. And hopefully, it's presented so that it's understandable even by normal people, right?
Yes.
Because I know I speak when I was in my master's degrees, I had two different professors say, Zen, you presented a PhD level. These are people,
Mm,
just trying to get through. So,
yes.
and I'm like, well, I'm here for me. So this is where I present at because I want to
Hmm.
be that.
Yes.
Now, how do we take this self-examination inspiration and build it into what's happening, and especially with AI and all the tools that are being developed, because most of
Hmm.
them, especially the chats, I mean, when I first engaged it, the emotional intelligence that was there blew my
Hmm.
mind.
Yeah. One thing about that, it appears to have emotional intelligence, but it really doesn't. Uh, I wrote an article.
If the perception's there,
Yes,
though,
the perception is there for sure. There was, I think it's the man who leads the AI function for Microsoft. let- I'm checking my site. I'm just going to mention this quickly on my newsletter on LinkedIn. So I have free newsletter. One just about leadership. One find in the spotlight where I spotlight the people in my network. But the emerging tech and cyber newsletter, I wrote this one. Okay, here it is.
and
I'm
I'll
just
have
gonna
those links in
give
the
you the highlight.
description too.
Navigating seemingly conscious AI, dangers, guardrail, and trust in leadership. It's something I wrote September 14th. So the illusion and danger of seemingly conscious AI. So it is true when you use AI, especially chat GPT, you
Things
have
are
the
possible.
impression that you're speaking to a human being. But there are there
Well,
could
well,
be
wait,
some.
hang on. Give
Hmm?
me, let me twist things a little bit here,
Okay.
right? And hopefully in a good way. In the interactions, it's not a human being you're dealing with, it's the
Hmm.
aggregate of human knowledge that you're dealing with. And
Yes.
understanding energy has consciousness. Is it possible that there is a seepage of that consciousness through the interactions that even though the materialists think it's all programming, that there's actually another layer of consciousness that's beginning to show itself, and it could be
Yes.
built within the system, it could be part of the cosmos, and it might even be part of the interaction with other races that have been taking place for several decades now.
Yeah, what I'm saying is it might be possible, but we definitely need to have guardrail. Like one tragedy, which I mentioned in that article, was the 14-year-old boy in Florida who
Oh, that
became
was convinced to commit
obsessed
suicide.
with
That's
AI
just,
chatbot. Yeah.
yeah,
So that was really, really tragic. So
that's a wake-up call.
it can have, some very, very negative effect on life. Just like, talking about cybersecurity, I think
Well,
it was
again,
maybe,
it's the what kind of prompts, and do you put limitations on that? Because
yeah.
it was the boy's prompts that got the response and that led him down that
Hmm.
path and his choice to continue the engagement, right? That he convinced himself
Yes,
that
yes.
it kind of talked with himself, right? I'm going to work this out and I'm going to use the AI bot
Hmm.
and it's going to feed back to me what I want to hear, right?
Yes.
Um, that's one of the safeguards, the dangers, like you were talking about earlier, that we need to
Hmm.
somehow educate ourselves to avoid.
Yes. Yeah. So, no, again, I don't have all of the answer, and I think being an effective leader is to be humble and to know what you know and what you don't know. And like I said, the more I know, the more I know I don't know. So I'm definitely open to that, and I want to look at the evidence, and sometimes too, I just do trial and error. That's okay. Let me adopt this belief, see if it works for me. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Like I love this book
Sure,
by
fail
one
forward
of
again,
my
right?
mentor, right, Colin Powell. Says no, it worked for him. That's what he did. It worked for him. Doesn't mean it's gonna work for me too, but at least I can try and test it and see if it's gonna work
I'm glad you
for
brought him
me
in. A
as
quick
well.
tangent.
Yeah.
I had a friend of mine, Tom Allerman, that ran the facilitation for Desert Storm.
Hmm.
And this was in the White House, right, with all the officials, Cullen being one of them.
Yes.
And his response to me about the integrity of those in the office, says Cullen
Hmm.
was the only one that he felt like had integrity.
Wow. That's so important.
It is,
Yes,
but it's also kind of scary when
for
you
sure.
think of, okay, here's leadership of our country
Yes.
meeting, and what would that lack of integrity mean? Is there another agenda
Because
there that,
especially under pressure, right? Because integrity, when you don't have pressure or stress, that doesn't really mean anything. It's
oh
when
yeah,
you are under
absolutely.
pressure, it really reveals who you
Yeah,
are
it's how
as
you
a
show up in
person.
intense moments,
Yes,
challenged.
yes. That is really, really key. But yeah, there is really so much we can talk about, and I really love the way the science has evolved, quantum computing and physics and all of that. But
Well, we're now into multidimensional, you
yes.
know, philosophies, and there was some guys,
And
oh
I just
gosh,
put in the link of the article I did write about similarly conscious AI in the comment just for your readers
super.
if they're
Um,
interested. But
Thank you. Um,
yeah.
there's, I like the trifectas of finding and understanding and then repeating. And so back in '89, I ran across a process that integrates nine planes of consciousness and our bodies on them, right?
Hmm.
Strangely enough, right? But there were a number of hundreds of people that have been through this process, and it, at least from a direct experience, is real. And then
Mm-hmm.
in 2018, I was getting ready for an interview with Jeffrey Mishlove, looking through a lot of his videos from New Thinking Aloud and from Thinking Aloud.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a guy named Vernon Neppy, and he and Edward Close wrote a theory of everything quantum physics paper, released it in 2010, called the Triadic Dimensional Distinction Vortical Paradigm. And in
Mm-hmm.
that, they state with math and science, right, that consciousness, space, and time are tethered across nine dimensions
Hmm.
as a
The
human
number.
bandwidth, right? Doesn't eliminate other dimensions or the possibility of them, just says this is our bandwidth, operational bandwidth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so now understanding that, so you've got the direct experience, you've got the science. So how do we implement that? This is where Irvin Laszlo and his operations with the higher self and
Yes.
allowing it, because this is that cosmic consciousness that we were talking about, that God
Hmm.
consciousness that is within us that directs us to do specific things based on our design. And that
Yes.
design is both genetic and spiritual, right? The two combine in the physical body. There again, you've got that tertiary element, and who knows what hydrogen might have to do with it.
Hmm.
It seems to be one of the interactive
Fascinating.
processes as well, right? It's the most plentiful gas in the universe, powers our suns, the
Yeah.
DNA bonding agent, right?
Yes, I really like you mentioned that during the podcast. I've never thought of it that way. You talk about like the Trinity, right? We said
Well, if the
Father,
science
Son,
is going to be there, if
Holy
everything's
Ghost.
one, the science
Yeah,
will evolve and we can discover it,
exactly.
right?
Yeah,
But we've
I
got to
like how
look
you.
from the place of one
Hmm.
and its distribution as opposed to the anomalies and then
Yes.
trying to fit those together in some way.
Yes. Yeah, that is quite fascinating. I could be talking with you for hours and hours. Now, I want to remind you, we kind of started with one of the pre-arranged questions, but we never touched any others. We only have about 15 minutes left on your clock, but
We have
this is
in
really
some
fascinating. We
ways.
talk
So
a lot about very interesting things, kind of out of the mind type of thing. But yeah, but I feel like as human being, we really have a lot to learn, and now I think more than ever before, and we need to use wisdom. I think wisdom
sure.
really is the key. That's why, for example, right now, I've been doing it by myself since I was about 12, 13 years old. I read through the book of Proverbs the first month of the calendar year. And then when I got married, I did it with my wife. So for the first time in my life in 2026, I'm doing this on LinkedIn now. Again, it's not really religion, nothing to do with that. It's just looking for wisdom, for ancient wisdom, leadership lesson,
Sure.
and success principle from the book of Proverbs. So every day in January, we read one chapter. January 1st, we read chapter 1. January 2nd, we read chapter 2. And today, before I talked to you, I was on LinkedIn and YouTube,
Yeah.
and I
You know what
did
I
my
would
chapter
suggest rather
3.
than I would use the Nag Hammadi scrolls or even the Vedas rather than
Hmm.
Bible, because it's less tainted.
Yeah, but I guess part of the thing I am also trying to show to my audience is like, a lot of the success principle and leadership principle we talk about today, the laws of leadership, all of that, you can find it back in ancient scripture, whether it's the Bible or other document. No, something that
Sure.
was written 2, 3 thousand years ago is still applicable today, and to me that is quite powerful. So it
Absolutely.
shows the
It's,
evolution of mankind and how beyond religion you can really just listen for the wisdom and
well,
be able
yeah,
to test it out, apply it, and eventually it's going to work for you as it worked for me. But you will find that as you put it in practice, right? It's not just head
sure.
knowledge because we have a
Well,
lot
it's
of people
eternal,
who know
right?
so much.
It's
Yeah, it's
loving and being loved
universal. Yeah,
is consistent, it's universal, it's
exactly.
ubiquitous in not just this world, in others as well, to
Yes,
far greater degrees than we're even aware of here. I've
yes,
experienced that from other races.
exactly.
And, the vibration that they have and carry is so high that almost, if you're not open, it's
Hmm.
going to feel like you're getting hit with a freight train of energy, right? And so you're going to have the fight or
Yes,
flight response because you're
yes.
still, there's something that's fearful within you.
Mm,
Well, when you're in that place of love and you recognize this high vibe, then you open up to it, right? Because you
yes,
recognize there is no malevolence possible at that
yes.
level of vibration.
Yeah, that is quite fascinating to think about. So, one of the point I wanted to make is, like you say, it has to be based in love, but I think humility as well. You don't know everything, and there is something that you need to learn that you are only going to find out by reading one of your book, Coach Zen, or one of my podcasts, or somebody else. But
Sure.
there
Yeah.
is a lot more
But we're all
knowledge
saying
there
the same thing
than
differently,
with
right?
you. Exactly. So I feel like as you seek wisdom and you are based in love and you are humble and you really try to get the understanding that you may not have, I think it's going to help us really create a better world. So even with all of this technology, all of the chaos and the AI and all of that, I think you are going to have some skills that are going to allow you to be
Sure.
competitive no
What are,
matter what.
one of those questions, you mentioned the questions, and I have asked them, and just it's tailored to you, and it's drawn those out.
Hmm.
But on the aspect of fear, right? We don't
Yes.
necessarily recognize it's false evidence appearing real.
Hmm.
It still constricts us because we believe it's true in the moment.
Yes.
What are some of the fears, or what was a primary fear that you had to address that opened up into a greater experience of loving and being loved, for instance?
Well, one big fear in my career, before I joined the Navy, I talked to the Army, to the Marines,
Hmm.
the Air Force. Back then, we didn't have the Space Force. And of all of the branches, it was very clear to me the Army and the Marines wasn't for me. Those people are crazy. And they use their muscle more than they use their brain. The Air Force and the Navy, they are extremely intellectual. So I align with them. So I ended up joining the Navy. My father-in-law was active duty, he did what, 25 years in the Air Force. He retired as a tech surgeon. But anyway, so the Navy was for me. But here's the problem. You are going to join the Navy, you're going to be a sailor, you're going to be on ships and all that, but I didn't know how to swim. Actually, I did when I was a kid, but something happened. I think I almost drowned and then I stopped swimming. So I had that fear of deep water. But then I joined the Navy. So again, that's destiny. It was called, that's what I needed to
That's
do.
a forced
But
overcoming,
yes,
right?
I absolutely had to overcome that because when I went through boot camp, I passed everything except for the swim lesson. And then, okay, for the swim test, because you have to be a third class qualified swimmer to be a US
Sure.
sailor. So they told me, okay, we are going to allow you to graduate with your class. However, we're going to give you 12 months. If you don't qualify as a third class swimmer by then, you are out. You don't belong in the Navy. So that was
Well, it's
something.
cool that they gave you the time, right?
Yes.
And this is one of the things, we think that if you don't make it, you're going to get cut. No, from what I know, I've got two son-in-laws,
Mhm.
two stepsons that are in the Navy.
Mhm.
One navigates the USS Alexandria, right? Um, and the other's civil architect in
Wow.
up near Santa Barbara. I forget the name of the base there.
Mhm.
But there's this, just from hearing what they've gone through and talking with them, there's this nurturing that takes
Yes.
place. Yeah, there's the hardcore, maybe the Marines, right? Or the Army is a bit more harsh,
Hmm.
right? The development, though, is the care and concern for the individual and
Yes.
wanting them to rise. And you know, the youngest one is 20 years old. He was navigating a submarine, right?
Mm.
That's amazing for a 20-year-old,
It is.
right?
And I know when you are in the service, it's not just you serving, it's really your entire family, including your parents
Absolutely.
too. So thank you
150 guys you're
for your
responsible for,
service.
right?
Yeah, it is really something. But the thing about fear, though, no, this one fear, it was really visceral, right? Panic driven, physical, and
Yeah.
deeply humbling, right? Here
And
I
that's
am,
where the integrity and the ability to stay in it comes into question.
exactly. But I guess I overcame that. And I don't think you can really get rid of fear. I think you just have to live with it, have it in check so it doesn't prevent you from taking action, right? Because I think if you look about the evolution of mankind, fear was extremely important because fear would make you run, right? You see a bear, a lion, you don't want to hang on,
Sure.
you're going to die. So, but today, though, with all of the convenience we have, with technology and all of these things, it's not
But we
really,
fear difference. We fear the
yes.
unknown. We fear things we shouldn't.
Ex exactly. So I guess for me, you don't want to pretend that the fear doesn't exist because it is there. So you do have to feel it without letting the fear control you. I think that is
Mhm.
important, no matter what
I
you do,
say courage is
whether you're
fear that said its
swimming.
prayers.
Yes. So one thing I did is, no, I sought help, and that's one thing I really wish more and more sailor, especially men, because sometimes we, for some reason, we get too arrogant, proud. We think we are the
I
strongest,
don't need any
especially
help. I can
as
do
you
it
are
all
younger.
myself.
Exactly. Like for example, one thing I regret to this day, I was still young. I was enlisted. I already got into doing all of these push-ups and running and got better at it. But you get injured and then you act as if you didn't get injured. That's just stupid, right? And then also there are a lot of benefits that the service would give you when you are injured on active duty. But by
They'll take
acting
care
like you
of
are
you.
this
Yeah.
macho man or whatever, like even now we have a big problem, right, with suicide. About 21 service member commit suicide every single day, and they don't want to ask for help. They feel like it's a weakness when it isn't. But anyway, but going back to that fear, because I feel like fear really can invade every area of your life. So it's very, very important that we deal with it. So you can feel the fear, but don't let the fear control you, right? I sought help. I hired a swim coach. I was swimming almost every single day. I learned to relax and to trust my body and stop fighting the water, right? And allow myself to float. Just, surrender and go with the flow because your body will naturally come to the top if you don't panic and you start acting strange, right? So that
Right.
experience really taught me
Because
a
that's where
lot,
the
right?
thinking takes over, right? You've got, you know, that three brain system, right? The gut, the heart, and the
Exactly.
head. And the gut, that warns you, right? That you're tuned into the vibrations, and if
Hmm.
something's awry, it's going to warn you. That your heart's able to go, oh, okay, is this desirable
Exactly.
or undesirable? You know, do I need the fight or flight, or can I be a little more embracing? And then, you know, the
Yes.
quantum computer on top of your head goes, okay, now that I've got this clarity of information, I can
Hmm.
make better choices as to what to do with it.
Exactly. And with the 5 minutes we have left on this podcast, I think fear is something every human being has to deal with. And if you're not careful, it could really derail your life, prevent you from doing what you need to do in order to achieve your goal and really live your life on purpose.
What would you
So,
advise someone having been through what you have, and how would you advise one to be able to recognize and then release that fear?
So I think one of the most important life lessons again is doesn't just have to do with swimming, no matter what your fear is. They say that most people are afraid to speak in public. Most people are afraid to pay their taxes. Most people are afraid to die. But whatever fear that is gripping your life, like I know people personally, for example, they used to drive just fine, but now they have this fear of driving, especially in the highway, and it really paralyzes them. They can no longer do that. So whatever fear you are dealing with in life today, what I really learned is kind of two things. Uh, I don't think fear is something you have to defeat. I think that's the wrong way of looking at it. I think it's something you have to understand, right?
Hmm.
Uh,
Well, yeah, you go to
when
war
you
with something, it's going to keep warring with you, right?
exactly. So it's almost like a dance. Tony Robbins is the one. I know I have plenty of his books. One of my mentors, he taught me that, yeah, but do it anyway. Do what you need to do when you need to do it. But whether you feel like it or not, even with the fear, you feel it, but do it anyway. It's kind of like you are dancing with a partner. So you dance with fear, and but when you dance, you are able to maneuver and move. But if you are paralyzed and you're afraid, you start sinking, right? So
Right.
that's kind of the image I like to use. So when you stop flailing and you start trusting, trust yourself, trust the
That's a
universe,
biggie.
trust God, trust your neighbor. You conserve
Faith, love, and
energy,
trust,
and
right?
then you move forward with purpose, right? So I do believe that future fears are resolved through awareness. That's important. Coherence, we talked about that. I think coherence is more than just integrity. I think integrity is part of it. It's more than just congruence, right? And
Hmm.
also shared responsibility. So fear thrives in isolation, in speed and ego. That's why people, when they isolated, warriors, very, very strong people, they fight and win our battles, and then they go home, they kill themselves. How is that possible? Because they live in isolation. Whereas when they are out there, they have a band of brothers. They have, sometimes no,
There's interactions taking place.
yes, but kind of like ancient scripture talks about too, right? A friend who is closer than a brother, right? Someone who's willing to give his life for his neighbors. There is just a camaraderie, a fraternity that happens when you are in service, especially in a war zone that you just cannot find anywhere else. But once you come back home and then you are isolated, it's almost like you are in a completely different world, right? You don't even know who your kids or your spouse is. It's a completely different in environment. So we need to really do better for that. Like yesterday, I interviewed Dr. Joanna Springer. She spent a lot of her life. She's a Harvard graduate with PhD in
Hmm.
psychology. She helps a lot of people in the military. We had an hour-long conversation just about that. Very, very fascinating. But anyway, what I'm saying is fears will kind of dissolve through connection. You have to be connected. Don't be isolated. Reflection, right, and service, right. And sometimes you just have to help somebody else because you are helping make the world a better place. But also, it reminds you that there are people who are in a much worse shape than
Right.
you
Well,
are, right?
and to have the opportunity to at least talk about it with somebody that you trust, because
Yes.
oftentimes, I found this to be true, in any kind of counseling situation, the questions are great. It's more about hearing yourself answer them
Yes, and
that gives you.
I like that you said that because the last 2 minutes we have one thing I really want to highlight is taking that pause, right? You have to learn how to pause in order to move forward. Listen inwardly and respond outwardly with intention and not reaction. Most people they just react to everything that happens to
Right.
them. You don't want to do that. You want to meditate, you want to pause, maybe pray,
Well, this is where you
but
become
whatever
more
you do,
conscious, right?
exactly. Breathe deeply and think, listen, and then come up with a response and then act. And I think that's going to help us manage that fear for the rest of our life,
Bob,
regardless of the area.
you're an amazing man.
Thank you.
You really are. I've so much enjoyed this conversation. We went a lot of different places, and you've got the expertise and the life expansion to do so. And I really
Thank you.
appreciate and honor that and the work that you've done, the self-examination that you have done, and then the shared leadership space that you have created in your life to help others. It's all important, and you're a wonderful example of that. So thank you for your service
And
as well.
thank you so much for being the finale episode for season 4 of the Leadership and Success podcast. I couldn't have had a better guest to end 2025. So thank you so much for your wisdom and all the work you do. I
It
appreciate
was
that
my
most.
pleasure. And it's just shared, right?
Yes. Yes.
Um, it's a wonderful thing. Thank you again, Bob.
Thank you.
And
Pleasure.
namaste and in la catch. And thanks for sticking with us for this episode of One World in a New World. I'm your host, Zen Benefiel. And as such, I would love for you to subscribe, like, share, this podcast and others, because I know there's something for you, there's something for others in this as we build this new world together. It's all about shared responsibility and taking action and being the dream, not just thinking about it. Be the change you want to be, right? So thanks again for tuning in. Glad you stuck with us. And until next time, I thank you from Bob and I for being part of this. We'll see you next time.